Okay, what do we got? We want to put a 5-inch thick layer of topsoil for a new 31-foot by 19-foot garden. The dirt store sells by cubic yards. How many cubic yards will you need to order? The store only sells in increments of 1/4 of a cubic yard. Okay. 5 inches thick, 31 feet by 19 feet, and we have yards. So we have inches, feet, and yards all going on together. That's kind of a pain. So we'll have to do some conversions. So just a note, we have mixed units we need to reconcile. And what do I recall? I recall that there's 12 inches in a foot. And there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And ultimately, my measurements need to be in cubic yards. So I think I'm going to, do I want to convert now or later? I guess I'm going to convert now and just deal with it. So let's do some conversions. So the 5 inches, to get rid of inches, I usually use conversion fractions. So I would say I want to multiply by a fraction with inches in the bottom, and I know how to get to feet, so I'm going to put feet in the top. There's 12 inches in 1 foot. So if I do this calculation to get rid of inches, this basically says divide by 12, because 12 is in the bottom there. I'll do that in a sec. Turns out we can keep going. I really want yards, not feet. So I'm going to do another fraction. Feet is in the top, so I put it in the bottom to get rid of it. Put yards in the top. And let's see, I was believing there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And because feet are in opposite positions here, they're going to cancel. And because 3 is in the bottom, that means I get to divide. So the final answer here will be yards. So if I take that 5 and I divide by 12 and divide by 3, which is on my calculator going to look kind of like this, it's either 5 divided by 12 divided by 3, or I could say it's 5 over 12 times 3. I think I'm going to go with that route. 12 times 3 on a good day is 36. So this would be 5/36 of a yard. And I'm going to resist plugging it into my calculator because then I have to worry about rounding the decimal. And if I round too often, that could throw off the answer. So I'm just going to stick with the fraction. But I am going to double check that I'm not lying about this version of the answer and that version of the answer on a calculator, just to make sure. Calculators are definitely our friends. I'm going to use the Desmos scientific calculator, which is a lot like my Bimart calculator that I paid $5 for. So let's see, what did I have? I had 5, and then I claimed if I divide by 12, and then, oh, this calculator is kind of a pain. I guess I'm gonna have to do it like this. Yeah, so see the decimal there is 0.13888. And I could round to call it 0.14 or 0.139. But I think I'd rather avoid rounding until the end. Desmos is kind of cool because it's got a fraction button. So it'll put it in fraction form for me, which I like. And again, we all need to be masters of our own calculator. If I were to whip out my phone calculator, get out of the way, zoom, looks more like this. If I typed on my calculator 5 divided by 12 divided by 3, I'm going to still get that same answer. But the way I type on that, my phone calculator looks a lot different. I don't know if you can see that up here. That's what it looks like on my phone. But notice I got the same answer when I wrote it this way or when I wrote it the other way. All right, so we've converted 1. So this right here is my thickness. I'm just going to make a note of that. My new thickness. And then I've got the 31 to convert and the 19 to convert. And so Notice when we did the conversion here, that was just a division by 3. So that means for the dimensions, and I'm going to sketch this out, 31 by 19. I think I'll make my 19 go this way and my 31 go that way. So I have this garden that looks kind of like that. It's 31 feet by 19 feet. But then it's also a little bit thick, right? We're going to fill this up with dirt. I'm just trying to make it look like a box filled with dirt. Big box filled with dirt. All right, and we calculated that thickness right there to be 5 out of 36 yards. So I should convert these other ones. And here I noticed the conversion is just to divide by 3. So instead of 19 feet, I could call it 19 over 3 yards. And instead of 31 feet, so I'm just relying on this idea up here. Instead of 31, it would be 31/3 yards. And again, there's a ton of different ways to attack this problem. I'm choosing to use fractions so I can avoid rounding until the end. And then basically I've got this big box of dirt. And so I need to know how much dirt is in there. And that's the volume of a box. And the volume is just length times width times height. And then your length, width, and height have to have the same units. So that's why I made everything into yards. So that means I'm going to have my length is 31 over 3 times my width, which is, let's say, 19 over 3 times my thickness, my height, which is 5 over 36. And again, important thing there is that all 3 of those measurements are in the same units. You can't multiply feet times inches and get something meaningful. And since each of these is in yards, I'm going to have yards times yards times yards. That's going to give me cubic yards, yards cubed. So now I'm just going to go over to my calculator, and I'm just going to multiply those 3 fractions together. So why don't you guys grab your calculator, see if you get the same thing as me. So I'll do it on my cheap calculator. All right, so 31 over 3 times 19 over 3 times 5 over 36. My calculator says it's a little over 9 cubic yards. Anyone else get that? I'm going to try it on my other calculator to make sure. All right, so I had 31 over 3. And on this one, I have to move out of the fraction to multiply 19 over 3. And then 5 over 36. Ooh, see, I typed that wrong. Backspace, backspace, backspace. Times, there we go, 5 over 36. And I got the same number as I did on the other calculator. And I'm using 2 different calculators because I don't know what you guys have on you for calculators. And so I just wanted to show not all calculators behave the same way, but if you know how to use them, they should give the same answers. All right, so we're making progress, but we don't have an answer yet. We have part of an answer here. So let's see, 9.0895. I'm going to take 4 of those decimals for now. So I think my volume is about 9.0895. Did I get that right? 9.0895. Yeah. Okay. So I don't really know how many decimal places I need. I could say I just need 9 cubic yards. That's going to be close enough. Might be. It's a little less than I need, right? Because this is a little over now, and 9. Is it okay to have a little less than I wanted? Probably. Be okay to have a little more too. But here we haven't used this fact down here. The store only sells in increments of a quarter of a cubic yard. So if we were okay with having less, we would just say, okay, 9 cubic yards is enough. But if we wanted to stick with, well, we really need more than 9, then at the store, they're not going to sell me this tiny bit of dirt there. They're going to say, hey, it's either 9 or 9 1/4, you pick. That's what we're charging you for. So because they only sell in 1/4 cubic yards, I would have to round this up to 9 1/4, 9.25 cubic yards. That's not the right cubic yards. Let's write yards cubed for this one right here. So because of the way the store sells it, I can only round to some version of 1/4. So I could round to exactly 9. I could round to 9 1/4, 9 1/2, 9 3/4. But 9.089 wouldn't be acceptable because of that last part there. If we rounded in between, would we get close enough? It depends. Like if I rounded 19/3 and I rounded 31/3 and I rounded 5/36 and then I rounded all at the end, sometimes rounding 4 times in a row can really throw the answer off. I'm kind of curious to see how much it might. It's in a problem to solve. Possible rounding error. Oops. So one important thing here is to make the calculation, we had to have the same units. So we had to convert to yards. So my length, which started off as, I think I had 31 feet, we converted to 31/3 feet. And a lot of people don't like fractions and they just plug that into a calculator, which is cool most of the time. So let's try that for fun. So if I take 31 and I divide by 3, I get 10.333, and let's just call it 10.3 and see what happens. So when I round, I usually make a wavy equals to remind myself. So I'm just going to say, hey, that's 10.3, and that should be yards. Oops, and I messed up there. Once I divide by 3, I've converted to yards. And then the width, that was 19 feet. Divide by 3, and we get yards. And we'll round that. Let's see, 3 goes into 19. 3 times 6 is 18. So 6 times with 1 left over. Oops, I meant to write 0.3 up here. So I think that's going to be 6.3 approximately. Let's check on the calculator. So it's always, I like in classes like this to practice doing it in my head and checking on a calculator. 19/3. Yeah, so 6.333, we'll round that to 6.3. And then we had a height, that thickness, started off at 5 inches, and we converted that by dividing by 12 and 3, which is like dividing by 36. And I think we already have that on the calculator. So if we stuck with the 1 decimal place, then it would just be 0.1. Oops. So if we went to 1 decimal places like the other, that would be 0.1 yards. And then we want to multiply all 3 of those and see what happens. Is it going to be far off from not rounding? So I'm taking my, what was it, 10.3 times my 6.3 times my 0.1. And wow, this time I get an answer of 6.489. So did my repeated rounding mess things up for me? The answer is yeah, quite a bit. So again, it's usually a good idea to try to round as little as possible until the end. And our calculators allow us to do that by holding on to fractions or longer decimal places. So that was a bad idea. So too much rounding.